When I hear people say, "Oh, education wasn't for me," I try to tell them that education is for everyone, but how schools teach you and test you was probably not for you. I've been watching a little bit of this show called A Secret Life, and it's basically observing kids in the classroom, making friends, developing things like behavior and empathy and understanding, loads of different things really. You see, I have quite a good memory, assisted by my dyslexia, and when I watch these documentaries, observing experiments, I don't know what they're called. Anyway, when I watch this, it takes me back to when I was in school as a kid and what I was like and things I did as a kid. I've talked about a few stories of me in school and stuff like that, but the day to day was really quite mundane, right? As obviously life is most of the time. I remember being very distant. I remember looking off a lot and not really being in with my peers. I would just I would do so many random things like count the amount of threads in a carpet, or imagine a person jumping from tree to tree outside, and I would barely ever be in the classroom, in the sense of my mind was elsewhere. And I didn't realize it then, but I know that I do it because I do it now and then. But I used to just gaze off of I would just sort of look, and I would just go into a completely different world where I wasn't where I was. Anyway, back to this show. There's a kid in it, and he is very much like me. I draw a lot of similarities from this kid, especially when I was a kid. Me and this kid was pretty much identical, and so I watch it and I can see him. He looks off into the distance. He's quite alone. Doesn't really understand a lot of different things. Pretty slow, and I can't help but be a bit sad. I don't really know why. Anyway, it's going through a multiple array of different kids, and what they're struggling with, and what they're good at, and what they do, and whatnot. And it comes back to this kid that I feel very similar to, and his dad has passed away from suicide, and obviously this kid's under he's thinking about a lot of things, he's stressing a lot, and I don't know. I just understood him. I just understood him a lot. I remember not really understanding loads at school. Not even at school, but in general in that lifetime, there's so many things. If you would have took this, right? This is a battery pack, right? And you said this is used to charge a phone. I wouldn't care. I would not even be. I'd just be thinking, what's that? What's that on there? What does that do? Even though you could be explaining to me how this transfers power to another device to allow it to stay on, I don't even understand what you're talking about. It was so hard, and everyone else just kind of got it. They're like, oh yeah, of course that powers the phone and whatnot. Where I'd still be focused again on this little thing right here. And it was always that. It was always that my attention was somewhere completely different. I could just never understand why no one else had the attention on this thing. Or maybe they did, but they hid it better. There was another kid, another girl, she struggled to make friends. And by the end of the term or whatnot, she'd made friends, and it was really nice. And I think about my time and as a kid, think about me having friends, and I don't really know if I had any. I talked to almost everyone. I think I talked to more people than anyone else in my class. I actually talked to everyone. But I don't ever think I made friends. And maybe that's a psychological thing, right? I think maybe some people in my class may have seen me as a friend, but I don't believe that to be true. I actually just believe I was just a person that people talk to sometimes, and that was it. Never really a friend. I remember friend groups. I can, like, vividly, in my head, I can remember friend groups that were together all the time, and I kind of jump around quite a lot to a lot of different friend groups, and or jump around to talk to them, or maybe play a game or two, and then that was it. But I never really made a friend. I could never just sit here and be like, oh yeah, that person was 100% my friend, and I spent most of my time with that. Kind of weird, because I think a lot of people have that person, or a lot of people do. I think I was lucky enough to have the skills quite naturally, because again, as this teacher was talking about this girl, some kids naturally are good at it and some are not, and they have to learn the skills of making friends, right? Just like tying a shoelace is a skill, you need to learn to do it. I think either I was lucky to be able to make friends, or that maybe I learned it quite quick. I'm not too sure, but I never had struggle with, like, talking to people and being cool with them and friendly and all that. But I never really made, like, a really good friend. Um, until I was probably about 13, 14, and then even then it wasn't in my social life at school. It was as I was outside of that, and so I now come to this conclusion that maybe no one that was in my direct life um, was clicking with me enough to be my friend in a way. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like a lot of kids got along very easily with a person, and that was it. Whereas me, it was like, oh, like, I can get along with you, I can be friendly, but I don't know if I'd ever want to be, like, friends. Like, I don't know. Maybe I thought too much about it. Maybe I was thinking too much about it. But yeah, yeah, I find it kind of weird, because you either have the people that are really bad at making friends, and they like loners, right? They're the kids that sit on the sideline, or they're by themselves, reading their book and stuff like that. Or you have the the pretty popular kid that's talking to everyone and friends with everyone and stuff like that. And I never felt like I kind of fit into any category in that sense. I didn't have a lot of friends, but I also didn't struggle to be with people and talk to them and stuff like that. So in that way, I kind of felt even more alone. At least if, like, I was a loner and I could read and I read a book or something on the sidelines, I may have another loner there with me just to be, alone together in a way. I know it sounds a bit random, but yeah, I think in that sense, I definitely felt a bit more alone. Another thing of which the mother said of this kid was that he was growing up really fast, right? And I always saw this as a positive. It was always like, oh, you're growing up fast, you're growing up fast. Now, being an adult, and have been an adult for a long time, I think growing up fast obviously has its benefits, but the reality is it's not good. Like, you should stay a kid for as long as possible, and that is coming from someone that used to pride themselves on how mature and how grown up they are. But the reality is, like, I think a kid should stay a kid for as long as possible, because it's a magical place, and being a kid, being naive to the world for as long as possible, sometimes I think is the best thing, right? And from what I've seen, kids that grow up fast, they do really good in the early game of adulthood, but actually start to deteriorate because of the life they've had to force them to grow up. And then you have the kid that's, like, really sheltered, right? You're in until their early 20s, right? And they don't really know a lot. They don't know a lot of hardships. They struggle as well. Because they get into this, what we call real life, and they kind of fall off. Some of them never come out of that. Some of them are muddy coddled till they're 34, right, or whatever. But the kids that, like, they slowly increase over time. They slowly keep raising the bar, like their mentors, their teachers, and their parents slowly increase the amount of stress, responsibility, things like that over time, seem to adapt the best. And honestly, I believe when I observe people like that do the best in life. To say someone that's sheltered or someone that's had a really bad life couldn't have a good life, I just think overall, percentage wise, the kids that seem to be raised a bit by bit do the best. I remember sitting in class now, young, I was probably like 6, 7ish. And I remember there was a girl in my class, and she was very well behaved, very smart. And my teacher asked her, how are you good? How are you well behaved, basically? And she said, bear in mind, I wasn't a naughty kid. I was angry, and I probably, I revert that. I was a naughty kid. I was pretty angry. I was definitely seen as a naughty kid for sure. But she talked about, what makes you good? And the girl turned around, she's like, I'm just well behaved. Just nothing. And I looked at that girl and I was like, how does she do that? Like, how is she just so well behaved like that? Like, what? How does that make sense? To me, it was like, I'm always getting in trouble for so much. Like, everything I do, I feel like I'm getting in trouble. How is she just so easily good? Whereas, now I've grown up, I've realized that, life was pretty good of her, and she was well raised, and I feel like slowly incremented right over life, and I think that allowed her to be good, not to have so much on her mind, so many things agitating her, angering her, upsetting her, and so it was kind of a luck thing, right? They also done this like kind of experiment where they did paintings. There's 4 kids, and they all paint 2 on 2 teams, right? And it's pretty sad to watch. They basically have to pick who has done the better drawing of their partner, their teammate. And one of them starts crying, and then all hell breaks loose. But basically, it's to kind of show empathy, that realization that like others have emotions, and that you should look after those emotions. If you see someone crying, you comfort them. If you see someone angry, try to calm them. Things like that, right? And watching that, I don't remember ever having that realization ever. I just always knew that I had to comfort someone that was upset. And a lot of people were talking about like, when you're about like 5, you realize that being smart is quite a benefit, right? And I think that comes in with it, right? That empathy, right? It's a social thing, right? Your friend's upset, you comfort them. You're gonna be better friends after, right? They're angry at something, you explain to them, help them, and you're gonna be better friends with them. And I just remember, I'll be honest, never having that realization. I just remember doing it, like it was like I was born with it, like it was sort of something that was built into me. I think one thing about my psyche, right, is that I was definitely not confident at all in a lot of factors when I was a kid. I understood this though, right? I knew that I wasn't confident in a lot of things, and I knew that my teachers knew, right? So when a teacher would compliment me, when a teacher would say well done, I remember one time we were doing this maths thing or a spelling thing, I forget what it was, and we'd come to the front of the class and there'd be 2 teams, and they'd come to the front, teacher would read it out, and whoever got it right would win, and the other person would go to the back of the line, and you'd go forward, right? And I got to this. Now I never won this, right? Because I'm slow. I'm really slow at these things. Mental maths is something I have to do, but it took me time, right? It wasn't quick here. And so I came to the front, teacher read it out, and she blew up when I got the answer right before the other person. And she literally, like, it was the biggest celebration of me ever when it comes to school. I remember it very, very vividly. And she gave me like the golden star, which was basically like, you know, the best pupil of the week or something, right? And I just remember looking at my, the other team, being, one of the smartest students, and thinking, they've let me win. Or my teacher is overthrowing this, like she's going so over the top to boost my confidence. In reality, it just made me feel like it was a setup. And it always did. And this was never a fault of my peers or my teacher. It was just how my psyche worked. I used to play chess a hell of a lot, and I really liked it. And I would, go against my teachers a lot because the students would maybe let me win. I don't know, but no one could beat me in chess. And then so I'd start playing the teachers, and they would let me win as well. And I'm like, why is everyone letting me win? Like, just like, oh, this sucks. I could never get better because everyone would just let me win at chess. It would only be, later down the line when I was about 13, 14, 15, that I came back to my primary school and I would talk to one teacher that I played a hell of a lot of chess with. And he asked me, are you still playing chess? And I was like, yeah, every now and then, I love the game. And he was like, oh, you should have carried on, you're really good. And I said, I would have been better if you guys would have, played, properly against me. I would have been able to learn more. And he laughed a little bit and he said, Cam, he never let you win. You're just really good. And even then, after so many years, right? He's lying. He's lying to me. And I always had this. Everyone's kind of lying to me. Everyone's just trying to boost my confidence. Now, as a kid, you can understand this in my head. I can understand it. Teenager, okay. But when you get to adulthood and young adulthood, and people are still saying the same things, it's kind of hard to ignore because it's over so many years and so many different people, so many different places, so many different brains saying the exact same thing. It's kind of hard to say, oh no, they're just trying to boost my confidence. Oh no, they're just trying to be nice. And I know now that when people tell me something that I've heard a million times, it's probably true. And my brain can no longer say, oh, they're just trying to be nice. I just have to learn to accept the compliment that I'm given, accept what I'm good at, which has always been hard for me as a kid. Considering I always thought I was bad at absolutely everything. But I wasn't. I was just bad on how they taught me and how they tested me at school.